The Moxley's mother is here, but first, a look back.
This is Bellhaven, a private community full of large homes, well-tended lawns, and wealthy homeowners. Crime seems unlikely here, and murder even more so. But on October 30th, 1975, a beautiful 15-year-old girl was bludgeoned to death. Former Greenwich Police Detective Stephen Carroll got the call.
We knew it was a girl because her jeans and her panties had been pulled down below her knees. And the head, her hair, was just red with blood, soaked with blood.
Martha Moxley had been brutally beaten with a golf club, then stabbed through the neck with a broken club shaft. Her lifeless body lay next to a tree, not far from where her mother, Dorothy, had been anxiously waiting for her daughter to come home. In the days after the murder, the investigation focused on 17-year-old Tommy Skakel. Tommy was the son of Rushton Skakel, who is Ethel Kennedy's brother. And Tommy had been with Martha the night of the murder, along with a group of friends that included his younger brother, Michael Skakel.
It was fairly obvious to us that this was a jealous attack. It definitely had sexual connotations, and it was probably Tommy.
Even though police found a set of golf clubs in the Skakel house that matched the murder weapon, they never had enough evidence for an arrest, leading to criticism of the police handling of the investigation. And Carroll now says they could have done more.
I probably was intimidated by the wealth and the power and the money there because we knew who they were. We knew the relationship between the Skakels and the Kennedys.
And so the case lay dormant for years, but the story did not. Timothy Dumas lived in Greenwich at the time Martha was murdered and wrote a book about the case.
It's a wound for the whole community, and it's a wound that I think Greenwich still suffers with today. Even when people weren't talking about this case, it was a presence. People knew about it, and they did bring it up privately.
Perhaps that's why Rushton Skakel eventually hired private investigators. He hoped to get enough evidence to finally clear his son's name. In 1975, Tommy told police he was with Martha, but went home to complete a book report and never saw her again. 15 years later, when the private investigators hired by his father asked Tommy about that night, he changed his story.
Tommy says that yes, he did go in the house at 9:30, but he returned outside for this 20-minute, prearranged 20-minute sexual interlude with Martha at the edge of the property.
And Michael said for the first time he had been there too, after giving his cousin a ride home.
Michael said that, yes, he did take Jim Terrian home with his brothers, but came back at about 11:15. And he went over to Martha's house, climbed a tree near the house, and was throwing pebbles at the window trying to get her attention while he's masturbating in the tree.
Why would both men change their stories? One theory is they were worried advancements in crime-solving techniques like DNA testing might turn up some evidence to link them to the crime. Meanwhile, the private investigators' report found its way to Mark Furman, a former detective known for his role in the O.J. Simpson case. Furman wrote a book that argued Michael Skakel, not Tommy, killed Martha, and then reportedly confessed to the crime during a stay at a drug rehabilitation center in Maine. It's a charge that Michael and his lawyer strongly deny.
This is a black or white issue. He either did it or he didn't. Michael has stated all along he did not do this. He had no knowledge of it.
But a grand jury seemed to feel there was enough evidence to proceed, and on March 14th, Michael Skakel was formally charged with the murder of Martha Moxley. That day, Michael Skakel addressed the Moxley family as he left court.
He said, I feel your pain, but you got the wrong guy, and we just said we'll find out in court.
It's something Martha Moxley's family has waited 25 years to find out.
And with me now is Dorothy Moxley, Martha Moxley's mother. Welcome.
Thank you, Emily.
What's your reaction to Michael Skakel when he said that to you outside of court last week?
Well, I was very surprised that he would come up to me, and I remember thinking I have not any idea what to say, and so I think the best thing is not to say anything. My first thought was that this was planned. I don't know why, but then afterwards I thought, well, this is a typical Skakel kind of thing to do. his father would have done that type of thing. I mean, they just feel as though they're, they're within their bounds all the time, and it doesn't make any difference what they do.
And it certainly got a fair amount of press afterwards.
Yes.
Do you, in your heart, believe that they've charged the right person with this crime?
I do. I really do.
And what has led you to that conclusion?
Well, the murder weapon came from the Skakel house, and that was the last place she was seen alive. After a few months, they stopped cooperating. And why would you stop cooperating if you didn't have something to hide? And then in recent, in the last few years, since about 1994, we have been able to talk to people who have gone to rehab centers with Michael. And we found out more about his personality. And we've heard from, now I have not personally heard what these people have to say.
They allegedly told the grand jury that he confessed while he was at this Elon school in Maine.
I understand it's something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what.
Now, will that be allowed, though? Do you understand that testimony will be allowed in court?
Yes, a testimony from the director of Elan, Mr. Ritchie, and from any of the hired professional people will not be allowed. But anything that was said to a friend or a bunkmate or someone in the cafeteria line with them, that type of thing can be used. Yes.
I've heard you say very eloquently that Russian Skakel was a friend of yours. They were neighbors. Mrs. Skakel had died a few years earlier. When this happened, were you surprised that they weren't more cooperative? The murder weapon came from the house. What made you, why didn't they?
In the beginning, right after we found Martha's body, they were very cooperative in that they had the police in for coffee, and it was very cold, and they had, they let everybody in, and they were very congenial and so forth, and Tommy had a lie detector test. I think he had 2. Anyway, they were very congenial.
Did he pass those?
The first one was incomplete, and the second one he passed. Yeah. And I guess the first one, they said he was so tired and so, nervous, and I don't know. But it wasn't until they started to seriously look at the boys that they then stopped cooperating.
And was it, as Detective Carroll says, a matter of the police being intimidated, kind of bowled over by the wealth and perhaps even the Kennedy connection? Do you believe that?
I myself, when I met Rush, I was really impressed. I was, I was a little taken back, and the idea of, being related to celebrities, and at that time, the Kennedys were really, they were very, very popular. And I think to this day, when you meet a celebrity, I was really excited to meet you today.
That's sweet.
Anyway, when you meet celebrities, or you do act differently, and I think it was actually a very natural way for the police to act. We all did that. We all treated them a little differently, so that was natural for them to do.
Do you think you would be where you are today if you hadn't received as much coverage as you have?
I think that eventually we would be where we are today, but I think that this has moved it a little faster. I have not had one unpleasant experience with the press or with the media. I've met many, many wonderful young people, few people that are kind of my age too, but most of them have been young people, and they're very bright and they're very enthusiastic. It's been a good experience for me, and and I'm glad that I was able to do this.
We were saying earlier, a lot of people out there have had their sons and daughters, their children murdered. Why do you think your case has captured so much attention? Even the author Dominic Dunn, whose own daughter was murdered.
Yes. Well, I think there's no question about it that the Kennedy connection has made it more newsworthy. And when you really think about it, the Kennedy connection is very small. It's just that Ethel Kennedy is their aunt. And the rest of the Kennedys are not involved at all. So, I mean, this really is not a Kennedy thing, even though they get dragged into it all the time, and I feel badly about that. But that's just life, I guess.
Yeah.
But I do, I know there are many mothers and fathers of murdered children out there who have spent hours, have spent their life now trying to solve their case, and their life savings, and nobody cares. And I have been so blessed. I mean, I have had these, I call them my angels, who all of a sudden, if you can imagine Dominic
Say that to the
Dunn,
politicians, yeah.
Dominic Dunn is an angel, and Mark Furman is an angel, and Tim Dumas is an angel. But, they've just come to me.
I want to ask you about Mark Furman, because he is a somewhat controversial figure. He met Dominic Dunn while Dominic Dunn was covering the O.J. trial. Of course, Mark Furman was the detective who found the bloody glove, and eventually a lot of the theory is that the case unraveled over his testimony. But he came to you after that case, 94, 95, I've lost a little bit track of that. What was he like to deal with?
He couldn't be nicer. Dominic Dunn called me one day and said, "Dorothy, I know someone who wants to write a book, a factual book of what really happened. Would you be interested in talking to this person?" And I said, "Of course, And he said, "Well, you're going to be surprised when I tell you who it is." So I said, "Well, who?" And he said, "It's Mark Furman." And I was taken back a bit, but I had just seen Mark on a lot of television shows because he was promoting his book, Murder in Brentwood.
That's right. Yeah.
And I was very impressed with Mark when I saw him on the the TV shows, the talk shows, and
How was he able to do something that no one else had done so far, which was directly point the finger at Michael Skakel?
At Michael. Well, I think the police were coming to this point too, but after an episode on Unsolved Mysteries, quite a few people called who had been at Elan with Michael, and anyway, and the police were getting around to this. The police have sort of done this by elimination. They've eliminated, they kept eliminating, and now this is where we are now. All the pieces fit, and there's no need to eliminate anymore. But Mark is such a good detective that he wrote this in such a way that it's so easy to read and understand, and he just simply opened up the time element, and everything, everything found its place.
Do you think there will be a conviction in the case 25 years after the crime?
I pray there will be a conviction in the case. I believe that prayers are answered. I really think that in this country today, there are too many crimes that are not punished. And I think that the people are just taking advantage of this. The moral fiber of the United States seems to be falling by the wayside because people are not punished for crimes that they do. I know maybe there are a lot of people that don't agree with me, but I think that we need to show people that you cannot do these things without being punished.
Well, we hope someone pays for the crime, whether it's the person charged,
right,
whether that's the right person. We will soon find out.
A jury will decide.
They will decide.
Yes.
Dorothy Moxley, thanks so much for coming.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
Emily.
All right, and when we continue, Senate President Tom Birmingham says we need to spend more money on